So in the last challenge, I gave 2 hints about what the next video was. One of them was everybody dies, and the other was mentioning how I wish I could use items, which naturally means we're going to do Final Fantasy II because everybody dies, and of course we're going to do it with items only. Now, you might be questioning how we're going to use items to complete the game. Well, I'll answer that shortly, because I first need to explain something. This run is only possible to be attempted on the Pixel Remaster version because of the innate gil booster. While technically not required, without it we would literally spend hundreds of hours just restarting for specific mobs and specific drops because of the way gil works in this game. You see, when you kill a mob, you have a chance to get one of 4 different amounts of gil. Let's use the base goblin as an example here. It can drop either 9, 18, 37 or 75 gil. Do you notice a pattern here? Basically, the gil doubles at each chance, and if we fought 4 goblins at once, it's also entirely possible for each of them to drop a different amount of gil. For this run, we're basically always going to need to get the highest drop possible for gil, which is possible, just requires way too much save scumming. So I'm going to use the ×4 gil booster to just try and save myself some time and some heartache, since we all know how RNGesus treats me, right? Also, if a mob drops items or gear, that means no gil drop. So let's talk rules. Number 1, the only action I can take in battles is using the item command. This means no attacks or magic command, no defending, because that's also a command, which also means I can't flee as well. Number 2, there's no Bahamut in this game, so I need to come up with a new way to annoy Daff before the end of the video. And lastly, rule number 3, for those who are subscribed to the channel, drop a comment for our weekly merch giveaway. The winner will be selected when the next challenge comes out. Just make sure you also have a contact email address added to your YouTube profile so I can contact you if you win. And since money is one of the most important things this run, I think it's only fair we get some extra with today's sponsor.
Corsair and their Scimitar Elite Wireless Gaming Mouse, complete with 16 reprogrammable buttons on the side of the mouse, which you can adjust up to a massive 26,000 DPI for those of you who are absolutely superhuman when it comes to reactions, and 2 of the best things ever, up to 150 hours without needing to recharge, and when you do need to recharge, it takes less than 90 minutes and you can carry on playing while it is on charge. Another key bonus, the size. The ergonomics of this thing is crazy good if you've got absolutely giant man hands like me. This is definitely the best gaming mouse I've used in a long time, and it's one that I'm going to stick with. If you want to pick one up yourself, then check the link down below in the description.
Okay, now let's start the run. Since the shameless Ko-Fi, Twitter, Twitch and Discord are busy in another world, they were unavailable for this run. It's okay though, allow me to introduce you all to their good friends. Like, comment, subscribe, and Greg. Look, he was adopted, okay? And now, after all the memes, we start in Altair, where we're going to spend all our money right away, right after Like starts calling out for comments and subscriptions. Come on, people, don't disappoint him. Then we're going to head to the shop, unequip our weapons, sell them off for more gil, and then we're going to buy 3 fire tomes. You see, in Final Fantasy II, the way you learn magic is by buying these tomes and then using them in the menu on your characters. However, you can also use them in battle as an item. You only get 1 use per tome, and they also have set levels which don't get stronger. But hey, it's items only. So now we're going to go out and murder some mobs for more gil. With our current rules, we can't attack ourselves to get stronger, and we can't level these spells up. So we're going to be quite weak for a very, very long time, which is why I want to do some gil farming now, where the mobs are easy. Also, you might have noticed the tomes are using Fire 8. Seems high level, however, that won't ever get boosted, so it's never gonna get stronger. At least, I'm pretty sure tomes aren't boosted by stats. I've looked around with a very extensive search for an entire 10 seconds, but couldn't find the answer, so if somebody knows, then please let me know. But it's not like it matters anyway, as we have no way to increase our stats using items. Now, our goal here is a solid 30 to 40 of each Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder tomes, but also 99 Cure tomes. But I quickly realize a problem. We're still not getting enough gil, even with ×4 gil drops. This means we need to save and quit anyway to aim for larger groups of goblins. We also need to buy some potions, because I need to select an item with each character for any actions trigger. This means I can use 2 fire tomes and a potion, for example, for the turns to complete. So now it's just a very slow process of grinding up my gil. The strategy I decide on is to simply save and do a battle. If I get less than 150 gil, I reload. If I get more, I save and do another one. This way, I'm at least making gil instead of losing it on some fights. But my plans massively change when I see just how slow this is. So I don't bother getting cure tomes and just settle for fire, ice, and lightning. We'll get the rest when we can get more gil. So for now, let's head to Flint and find Scott. Watch him die, steal his ring, and then head over to our lovely Princess Hilda in Altair. Minwu will join the party, so now we have 4 members and we get a canoe. Marvelous, because now we can head north where we can fight bigger groups of mobs for more gil. But sadly, we're still losing money on the way to Salamand because they still aren't dropping enough. What also doesn't help is the fact that some mobs take more than 1 tome to kill, which means we need to get 300 gil from those fights. I have an idea though, and if it works, it's gonna be so freaking big brain. Firstly, I go north of Kashrun's Keep where we can encounter groups of 7 and 8 monsters per fight, including goblins, and do some more gil grinding. Then I go back to Salamand and buy teleport tomes. And now it's back to Finn where we're going to fight captains. These drop 300 gil, 450 gil, flame bows, golden armor, and then 2 spell tomes, being Curse and Toad. We're going to save, use a teleport sphere, and one-shot the captains. If we don't, reload the save. Now, every single time we one-shot these, we're going to be at least equal to our spending, because we have the 4 times gil. Even if we get the lowest amount, it means we end up with either 1,200 or 1,800, and teleport tomes only cost 1,000 gil. The worst drop for us is the golden armors, which only sell for 1,000 gil, which is equal to our spending. Flame bows sell for 2,000, and the big money makers, the items we want, are Curse tomes, which sell for 4,000 gil, and Toad tomes, which sell for an awesome 5,000 gil apiece. These are the ones that we want the most. Now sometimes this goes horribly wrong, where it takes forever to proc, because it's only level 8 and our spirit stat is basically non-existent, with us having no way of upgrading it. Likewise, sometimes it can work first go. And with this method, we solve all our money issues as I get over 1 million gil. Think that's a lot? No, I wish it was enough, but it's not even close to how much we're going to spend this run. That is absolutely nothing. I also keep some of the golden armors to equip and do the farm once more to get 99 Toad tomes. I don't really care about Curse and sell them off. Then visit all towns and buy 99 of every tome. Now, I could technically go to Mysidia to buy Holy, but that seems a little cheap, so we're not going to. Also, for anybody bringing up the fact I'm using the no encounter booster, even if I didn't use it, I could cheese random battles by abusing quick save, taking a few steps and quick saving again, so I can technically get everywhere without an encounter, even without using the booster option to disable them. So I think this is fair game as a simple time saving measure. Oh, and future Primal here, this decision really comes back to bite me in the arse later. Can you guess how, why, and where? Okay, so Joseph is lying. He has the mithril, but he knows people are held hostage in Semi Falls, so it's up to us to go save them. When we get there, the Master Thief Paul is already there, stuck in a room with no guards, and he doesn't escape until we show up. Talk about being a chicken, man. Wonder if his weapon is the chicken knife. So, we continue further down and find a soldier. Remember in the last FF2 challenge where we did auto battle only and we got our butts handy to us? Well, we have no such issue here. I queue up one of each element tome and also a teleport tome. No idea if it'll work or not, as I can't remember, but turns out it does and the boss gets one shot. Ah, sweet revenge. So grab the mithril he was guarding and take it back to Altair, give it Hilda, upgrade our equipment, and now it's off to Bass to stop the Dreadnought being completed. Shame by the time we get there, it's already finished. Doesn't mean we can't have a lovely chat with the Dark Knight, somebody's brother who apparently can't recognize the voice, but then the airship flies off and destroys everything. Guess we should do something about that. But first, check out this glitch with my shadow being like 5 steps behind me. No idea if it's a glitch or it's just always like that in FF2, but I honestly can't remember ever noticing it before. Anyway, we need Sunfire to destroy the ship, which means we need Joseph's help to get the Eagle's Torch, which will let us control Sunfire. Before that though, since we're down here anyway, we need to go to Mysidia and pick up some holy tomes now. I know from my FF2 magic only run, we have a boss coming up, which I can only damage in 3 ways, because it absorbs all elemental magic. There's only 3 spells in the whole game which even damages it, and the easiest one for us to get right now is holy, but we can only afford 42 of them. I told you earlier that 1,000,000 gil is nothing in this run. Then I get to Joseph and realize I messed up. Again, pretty sure I did this same thing in the other 2 challenges I've done for FF2, and that's I forgot to speak to the king to get the goddess bell phrase learned. Also, apparently subscribe speak beaver, and honestly, with how YouTube is coding, yeah, I can see that being beaver language, to be honest. Would explain a lot of the problems anyway. So, let's go fight the Adamantoise, an absolute nightmare in the last challenge we had. So let's see how it goes here. And I decided to use 2 Holy Tomes and 2 Blizzard Tomes, just to check the damage. And Holy does an awesome 65 damage, but that's a hell of a lot lower than I was expecting, and it's also massively screwed my plans for later fights. I had really counted on it doing at least a couple hundred damage. I am super screwed later now, but the Toys dies to some more Blizzard Tomes anyway. Then, we grab the bell and fight Borgin. For this fight, I'm lazy and just leave the Blizzard spells to finish him off, since he's by far the easiest boss in the whole game. Then, we casually watch Joseph die, and we're absolutely not going to tell his daughter about his death, because even though I'm going right past Salaman, I'm too lazy to go in there and let her know. Look, she'll figure it out in a few months, okay? For now, let's head to Cashun's Keep, find the coward Gordon, who's already here whimpering in the corner, and then we can head through and fight the Red Soul. This guy absorbs all magic except for 4 spells in the whole game. That's Drain, Osmos, Holy, and Ultima, aka the only non-elemental ones, and Osmos just drains MP, so is useless, and we can't get Ultima yet, and there's only 1 Ultima tome in the whole game anyway. This leaves us with Drain and Holy. We have Holy tomes, and the only way to get Drain is drops from 2 monsters. I'm honestly tired of farming for now, so we're just going to stick to the Holy tomes since we have them. And while he's nuking us with level 8 spells, we're doing the same back. He does eventually go down after working my HP down a little, but really we were in no big danger of dying here. The Red Soul might have stronger magic, but ultimately it's largely useless and weak when it comes to damage output, just like us right now. Anywho, outside we see the princess get kidnapped, so we need to go and infiltrate the Dreadnought to save her sorry ass. Oh, and Sid, I guess. You know though, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. We're just a bunch of kids according to her, and we're not fitting to join the rebel army. But here, we're just casually doing everything for them. I really hope we're getting paid for all this work she's making us do, but I suppose on the bright side, having the future queen as your bestie who owes you a favor will always come in handy, right? Before that though, we're broke again, and I can honestly see us needing more gil than can be imagined in the future. So, I'm going to commit to a huge gil grind here. I want to get 99 holies, and at 20k a pop, that's a lot of gil. But I also want to make sure I have enough gil for later when I can buy Flare, which is a solid 40,000 gil each. AKA, we need just under 6 million gil. This is going to take quite a while, sadly, and the reason I do it now is soon the captains will vanish from Flynn, and we lose access to such an easy farm. Once that's done and we're inside the Dreadnought though, I start a monster in a box fight by accident and use tons of teleport tomes, which don't work in the end. I try some toad and warp tomes as well. They essentially function the same way as teleport, in the hopes that one of them would trigger, but sadly not. So I swap to holy tomes to kill the magicians off, who just wouldn't be evicted. Also, I would just like to say that I did in actual fact remember to save Princess Hilda and Sid this time before trying to blow up the Dreadnought, obviously proving my memory is indeed better than a goldfish's, albeit only slightly. Once we're back at Altair, Gordon ditches us as well, but he does give us a new mission. He wants us to head to Deast, the home of the Dragoons and Wyverns. But first, we need to burn a few pirates to steal a pirate ship. Well, I say steal, but the pirate captain actually just joins us instead, so I guess not quite stealing as such. Maybe more a forced takeover? Anyway, once we get to Deast, we find a widow and her son because all the Dragoons were poisoned by Kefka, and the lone Wyvern is also dying. First, we run into the cavern behind the castle and grab the pendant, which lets us speak to dragons, and then we return to Castle Deast, where we're given a huge egg by the Wyvern. And while I prefer more sunny side up eggs myself, everybody else likes onsen eggs, so we're gonna have to go throw this giant egg into a hot spring, live spring, whichever you want to call it. The problem here though is before we can do that, we have to fight some chimeras. The amount is random though. It's technically a boss, but it can be as few as 1 chimera or as many as 4. Normally, they would be extremely easy and die in just a few hits. We don't have that luxury in this run though. And of course, we get all 4 chimeras to spawn. So I play very defensive and get up all my buffs. Protect, Chal, Wall, Barrier, and Blink. And then throw out a Cure as well. Then we use some teleport tomes and instantly get 3 out of 4 of them. Man, it really seems like I wasted some buffs here. Especially when, and I'm actually a little gutted this happened, but my second teleport tome actually nuked the 4th chimera as well. But at least we got through it, I suppose. Once we head back to Altair, we find out the real princess wasn't rescued by us before, and instead the seductive Queen Lamaya, and she happens to try it on with us. Fun fact as well, this boss can actually drop some of the best equipment in the whole game, like a ribbon. Hopefully, if we win, we can get something good from her. But she has sleep and confuse attacks, which she likes to use a lot, and she also deals absolutely crippling damage. I try for some teleports first, but don't have any luck with it, and at that point, I'm basically stuck using Basuna and Live Tomes to cleanse the debuffs and revive who she kills. I try a healing strat and have no real luck. I do throw out some holies every now and again, but this is going to be long this way, so I make a gamble. First, I make sure to revive everybody and then set up some buffs like Blink and Barrier. From there, it will hopefully reduce the amount of status effects I get dealt. Sadly, Layla dies right after the buffs, so I revive her and say screw her. If she dies again, then proceed to just use Holy with each character. It uses quite a lot of tomes, but I don't really have much choice here. And while eventually we do manage to win, we sadly did not get any equipment drops, instead only getting gil. might be nice, but it doesn't even cover the holies I used. Then we find out Princess Hilda is the prize in a fighting tournament, but we have a problem here. So firstly, we have lots of bosses coming up which are going to devastate me in terms of how much damage they do, how much health they have, how little damage I do, and how little health I have. Now, I can't change any of them except for one. And since my damage is always going to be low, this means fights are going to be long. So right now, before the mobs change to their rank 5+ versions, we're going to do some HP grinding. How? Simple. We're going to fight outside Altair. I have enough gil at this point that I can afford to waste tons of fire, ice, and lightning tomes. So while I can't target myself, there will be times mobs are still able to hit me. I just really wish there was a way to increase my mind and intelligence stat without actually having to cast a spell, since that would open up a lot of options for us, but we can't. So we need to plan for the absolute worst case scenario, which is the Emperor at the end of the game with his mighty 15,000 HP, insane 70% magic defense, and he resists or absorbs all elements as well. At my current damage levels, aka 30 to 60 damage a hit, that means between 300 and 500 tomes need to be thrown to kill him. Will I survive that long? Honestly, I doubt it. So let's hope Flare deals a lot more damage than I'm expecting currently. Either way, these fights coming up are going to be long. Really, really long. And drawn out fights, I suppose, in a sense, it's going to be like Penance and Yzermatt, where you just have to fight in a very specific manner and have the patience to not make a mistake. After the HP grind, we go to the Coliseum and get thrown into a fight with the Behemoth. Now, you might see my HP and think overkill. Honestly, no. With how long fights are going to take and how little damage and healing potential I have, I don't even think 9,999 health is going to be enough. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, which might not actually be that far away. As for the Behemoth though, we can use teleport on it, so it's not a huge deal, just takes a few turns. Then shocker, the Emperor knows we're rebels and throws us into jail where we get saved by Paul. You remember him, right? That guy who couldn't escape the mine before even though the door was open? Yeah, he saves us. So, let's grab Hilda, the real one this time, and get out of here. This is now also the last point we can farm captains. I think I have enough gil though, so I'm not going to do any more farming now, but let's head over to Castle Finn where we have our next boss, Gotos. And he hits hard and very fast, so this could be very dangerous. I start out trying teleport, which doesn't work sadly. So after a few turns of that, I give up on it. While doing this, Layla gets smacked around a bunch and dies since Gotos does 200 odd damage every hit pretty easily. I then move to Holy but realize, hang on, it's only a little more damage than my fire, ice and lightning tomes, but so much more expensive. There's no way I can upkeep that. So even though the fights are going to be so much longer, I swap to my basic tomes. They might do less damage, but they cost a fraction of the price that Holy does. So I swap away from using them. Eventually, Gotos uses haste on himself. This makes him a lot more dangerous as he now starts hitting for 500 odd damage a turn. Needless to say, that's pretty brutal. Now, do you see why I had to do the HP grind and why I said it wasn't as overkill as some might think? That was just Gotos. He's just a joke boss, but would have been totally impossible for us pre-HP grind. And while I do eventually win, I lost a combined HP total of nearly 5,500 across the whole party. That's more than double my previous HP totals combined. By now, we have to go do the part I really don't want to do though, Mysidia and the tropical island. Now, these are pretty easy and straightforward with no real bosses, as it's just grabbing the masks and throwing them on statues to get the key to enter the Midian Tower. The black mask is guarded by some big horns, but that's nothing some teleports can't handle. Now, on the way, we get eaten by Leviathan.
He also apparently ate a Dragoon who I guess jumped off the edge of a cliff maybe, but we have to fight a worm inside the stomach. And oh Jesus, this fight. Ricard dies instantly because of course he does, but this fight, so I try teleports, don't work. I go back to regular tomes doing a casual 40 damage a time. He might only have 2500 HP himself, but this is slow and painful, especially when he's hitting me for 500 odd damage a hit. He's just massively working me down every turn, and eventually Maria does get below 1500. When this happens, I swap Furion into using Cure Tomes. But while that only heals like 80 a turn, and when being hit for 500, it's like fighting dehydration in the desert with a drop of water every few yards. It helps, but it's only gonna help you get an extra few yards. Eventually, I get worried about how many fire tomes I have left and decide to turn auto battle off to check. But of course, Sod's Law, that's when he dies for me. I did check after the fight as well, I had 24 fire tomes left. So yeah, I burned through a lot of them. But now we have Midian Tower. Before we go there though, let's stock back up on tomes and items ready for the first of my 3 nightmares, and 3 locations where I think will end the run. So in the tower, we have to fight a couple of bosses, namely all Gigas mobs. However, they each have an element. The first is fire and it hits hard. In fact, it nearly one-shots Ricard with a fire 16 cast. However, I decide to change my gear and go for as low magical interference as possible. I don't know if it really does anything when using items, but since our spirit and magic stats seem to, then maybe this does as well, which should help a ton for us. Also, since the Fire Gigas is weak to ice, I throw out Blizzard Tomes and do an awesome 130 to 200 damage a hit. And since the Gigas has only 1800 HP, we managed to down it with very little effort. I do like when bosses are weak to elements. So, after fire comes ice, and we do the same strat here, only instead of ice tomes, we use fire tomes. This guy also hits harder with his melee, doing nearly 600 points of damage, but his magic is only level 12, and instead of being on the same person, it's AoE, meaning the threat is much lower before he gets taken out. So, next is Thunder. Now, this guy is weak to poison, aka Scourge, and guess what tomes I don't have, because you can't buy them. Yep, Scourge. So, we're gonna try some teleports first, which of course don't work. So I swap over to Holy Spam, but Ricard gets one-shot by an insanely strong 1200 hit from the Thunder Gigas. The rest of the party are thankfully in the back row, so only suffer about 600 damage. But all his other attacks also do a solid 500 to 800 damage per hit. The silver lining here is they are all single target, which means with me doing essentially 150 to 250 damage per turn, I know I can kill him before he wipes me out, so I forgo all defense and just focus on damage. He did nearly kill Maria and Guy though, and as a side note, he has 2500 HP. The next big bad boss has 3000, but a casual 3 fights in a row with some mobs who are extremely tough. I am of course talking about the Emperor, but before that we grab the buffs and the ultimate home from the top of the tower. The buffs are also pretty freaking good, giving me a massive plus 10 to my Int and Spirit. This should be a nice increase to damage now. Probably not huge, but I can hope. Afterwards, tell Hilda Minwu is dead, throw the pendant at the mirror so the last Wyvern egg hatches, and now we're gonna force the baby dragon, who was just the second born, to fight with us, and probably die ending his race forever. Okay, that's a little morbid, but for now, let's go to Paul. Tell him we're going to the Cyclone so he gives us all his items. Probably won't do much, but every little helps. I'm just sad I can't use the Blood Sword. And then, with that, it's time again to refill on items and tones before heading to the Cyclone. Oh, and I leave a spare save outside the Cyclone as well, just in case I have too much difficulty in there. At least that way I can still grind my HP out if required. So, first of the 3 fights is against 2 Royal Guards. We use teleport on these, which takes a couple of turns, but works without too much bother. The second fight is against 3 Royal Guards, and this one I had no such luck with. I got rid of one pretty quickly, but the other 2 would just not get hit. In the end, Ricard died and then Firion got venomed. This is also where I learned that Isuna actually revives people from the dead in this game. I never knew that until now. So, with Ricard back alive and statuses cleansed, we managed to teleport to the final 2 and move on to the third and final fight. Here we're up against 2 Royal Guards that inflict venom, a Wood Golem that inflicts sleep, both of these mobs do good damage as well, and lastly the Emperor, who has some melee attacks and magic. So I start off with Shell and Protect and then have to keep using a mix of Basuna to cleanse sleep, Isuna to cleanse venom, while trying anything and everything. First, I use teleports to get rid of the Royal Guards, while also hoping it gets rid of the Wood Golem. It sadly does not. So I use the Flare Tome from the Midian Tower, which actually deals 100 damage across the board, which is nice. And then I also use another item I never knew existed in this game, the Wyvern. Turns out in the Cyclone, the Wyvern is an item which actually deals damage. It's an infinite use item, however, you can only use it with 1 character per turn, and it's essentially a very slightly stronger fire spell. Now, this back and forth goes on for a while, and eventually the Wood Golem does indeed die. I'm moderately healthy after a few cure tomes and high potions, so now it's just time for the Emperor. This is why I switch everybody over to using Holy, as it does the most damage for me. But there's a problem. The Emperor can throw out elixirs to heal himself, and while it's not a proper elixir in the sense it doesn't fully heal him, it does still restore him around 1000 HP a turn, which is a real kick in the teeth. So that's about 15 Holy Tomes, give or take, aka about 300,000 gil. And what's worse, he does this 3 freaking times, and it's gut-wrenching, especially considering we're really not far off from the over-expensive Flare Tomes. The good news though is the Emperor on his own doesn't really do much damage. This just lets me concentrate and focus on dealing as much damage as I can while hoping he doesn't actually use an elixir again. And eventually he finally dies, which is great because that's fight number 2 that I was seriously thinking I wouldn't be able to do. I think in my mind I overestimated the amount of damage he can do to me on his own. And hey, who needs healing anyway, right? One thing I'm not overestimating though is the next one, the final boss. Before we get to him though, we find out Greg has taken over the Empire and it's up to us to go throw some books at him. But before we can, the Emperor returns from hell as the new ruler of the underworld, so of course that means Greg becomes a good guy and Ricard dies. Look, I don't know how that's just a matter of course, but it's Final Fantasy and it kinda always happens, so let's roll with it anyway. And in Pandemonium, on the way to the final boss, we're gonna stock up on Flare Tomes from the secret magic cellar behind the waterfall. Then I also farm Little Murderers a few times as well for their wizard staff drops, which when used in battle casts Scourge 16. Now, we're ready for the final boss. Since I farmed way more staffs than I needed, I completely forgot they're essentially infinite use, and all I needed was 4 of them. Anywho, there's a lot to unpack here with this. So firstly, I set up my defense abilities like Shell, Protect, etc. The boss only has 3 attacks to worry about. The first is a gravity-based melee, which also heals him for how much health I lose, and is by far his strongest attack. Starfall, an AoE attack which does about 300 damage, and Flare, which hits for about 900 damage. He does also have Curse, but that doesn't matter here. Because of his healing ability, our first step is realizing my high HP pools are gonna cook me here. So we need him to kill our characters so I can revive them and keep them lower HP. This means when he attacks them with his melee, he's only healing by a few hundred and not 3000 plus.
but I also need them able to survive Starfall, so about 400 to 500 HP is the sweet spot for me. Then I try out a bunch of attacks to see which is the strongest, and of course it's Flare. So I start spamming Flare Tomes while reviving any characters who get picked off. Partway through, I know I'm in serious trouble, so I try for Teleport, Toad, and Warp. All insta-kill attacks, but of course he just absorbs them, so I go back to Flare until they eventually run out. Then I go to the second hardest hitting attack I have, which is Scourge 16 from the Wizard Staffs. Now, I'm not going to bore you with this fight, as the clip I'm sending Daff is close to an hour long for this fight. So let me give you the TLDR. This fight's impossible with items only. Why? Well, we can get some decent damage out while he has MP, because he casts spells and doesn't heal as much, but he can indeed actually run out of MP. And when that happens, all he does is use his melee attack. This means every single turn for me currently, he's healing anywhere from 100 to 1200 HP, which needless to say, I can't keep up with damage wise. Now, it got into a deadlock where I would just revive anybody he killed while doing some damage, but after keeping track of the numbers for 20 minutes, and yes, I mean all damage and healing, I didn't actually manage to do any damage. In fact, he actually restored nearly a full 1/3 more than I actually inflicted. Kinda sucks, I know, that we were not able to actually kill him, and for it to actually be impossible. I was really hopeful. I would, however, be curious to the fact what would happen if my HP was lower going into the fight. But given how some of the earlier fights went, I feel like the higher HP was kinda needed. Maybe not as high as I had, but high enough to the point that I feel it would still have been impossible to beat this form of the Emperor. Although, this run might actually be possible on the PSP version due to extra equipment available for the characters, which give insane stat buffs, which of course means more damage in general. Maybe I'll come back to this run in the PSP in the future, or maybe Tentacles or Burke can give it a try. For now though everybody, that's a wrap here. I hope you enjoyed, and remember to hit that like button, drop a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.